Awesome. Hello everyone. This is my second video on my Epic channel, and we have a very honored guest, someone that has helped me like a sage, in my on my sort of journey as a CDH player. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for that probably too effusive intro. I go by J.M. Craig on the internet. You can all call me Jack. That's my first name. I've been playing Animar for a very long time now. I was one of the first guys who had a list on like tappedout.com, if you remember that. People seem to like it. I like making it. I like playing the deck. And over time, as CEDH sort of grew up around us, I got pinned down as like the Animar guy. So we would, work on the deck together. And with all the help I've had from everyone, like Jigme and everyone else on the Discord now, we've been putting together something really excellent, and I'm happy to share it with you. So thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely no worries. Yeah. So my first question is, like you said, this deck is quite old, um, and we are maybe not unfortunately living in modern times, and cards have gotten better. So because of this, the format is growing stronger, and decks are becoming more sort of staple oriented, and Animar gets to play some pretty janky stuff. Um, what do you think? Do you like the direction that it's going in terms of like um, every deck sort of having the same sort of basis and more staples than certainly what it used to be back in the day?
Well, so there are a couple ways we can go about this. I think
Mm,
first of all, as one thing you have to say about CEDH is that it mostly grew out of EDH.
mm,
And I think a lot of us came to the format from building casual first. And
mm,
we like the sort of identity of picking a commander, and that guy is our deck. And so
mm,
that was sort of built into EDH from the start, right? The original Elder Dragons were meant to be the personality of your deck. And I
mm,
think that's one of the reasons EDH has been phenomenally successful over the years, unlike something like Canadian Highlander, which has very, very similar rules, similar deck construction, similar social dynamics. But your deck is sort of headless, and that there
mm,
isn't a guy who can rally around. Like when you describe your deck, we say, I play Animar. I don't play team or statue combo. I play Animar. And so that is somewhat at odds with the way the format is going now, because just due to sheer power creep, there are more and more cards that you kind of have to be playing.
mm,
And so the original sort of identity of your deck is just sort of sublimated under like, well, 12 new red cards that are absolute staples were printed last year in whatever, the Borderlands expansion that just came out. So we're going to be playing all of that crap. And so the feel of playing your Animar deck that does its Animar thing has changed a lot. If you couldn't pick up from the sort of tone with which I was describing that, I don't really like that change as much as I like to be able
mm,
to say, I'm going to go dig deep in the bulk bin and find 99 sort of weird cards, many of which you may not have heard of, and they are all cool because they do a thing that the commander of my deck synergizes with. And like I can make Bond Beetle into something that actually opens up a really nice line for me on turn one. These days, it's like, well, okay, we have Bond Beetle, but at the same time, we also have three more zero cost mana rocks that are just so much better. And we'd be dumb not to play those. Uh, so that's part of the unique feel of playing a really old deck. If you remember, Animar was the second face commander after Riku, and I believe the first 2011 commander
that
precons ever
was.
made.
That is true.
Yeah,
I
so
remember
Animar's
Riku
been
as well.
around for quite a long time.
Mm,
Uh, and it has had to adapt a lot. And
mm,
the other thing I want to say was that there are two main sort of changes that have happened in the last couple years in EDH. And the first is that there's been more and more product released every year, and the overall power level of that product has been increasing astronomically. Since about 2020, I would say, is roughly when it happened. Partners were 2016, and that really signaled like we're going to start trying new stuff with the commander space because we know that that's where most structured players are playing. The majority of players who are playing a named format are playing commander now.
Yeah.
with obviously a giant bunch of people playing tabletop 60 card nonsense like kitchen table stuff. But
Yeah.
the majority of players who are playing a named format are in Commander now.
Mm.
So Wizards said we're gonna zero in on that and start selling stuff to those people. And so they've been printing. The number of legendary creatures goes up. The number of commander precons goes up. We used to get a commander precon if you're a little bit newer to the format. We used to get a commander precon every 2 years,
Yeah.
and there'd be a set of 5 decks, and you'd just have to hope there was cool stuff in there for
Yeah.
you. And increasingly that became Dockside and Fierce Guardianship. But back in the days, it would be like ultimatums and stuff, or like the new
Yeah. Oh
four
my
commander
God.
card,
I remember
and we'd
when
be like,
like,
oh,
yeah.
cool. So the tempo of all of that has changed, and the overall power level of all of that has
Yeah,
changed. There
absolutely.
are cards that Wizards had says people like to play a lands matter deck. I'm going to print a commander that does specifically lands matter stuff, and we get Windgrace, and then he gets power creeped up to Soul of Windgrace, and then there's an Omnath, but maybe let's add another color to Omnath. And
Yeah.
so they like we want to do Enchantress. Let's make 3 new Enchantress commanders. We want to do Elves. Let's make 3 new Elves commanders. So Wizards has really sort of zeroed in on what Commander wants to be doing and dumped a fire hose of product into it,
Yeah.
and that has created this power level sort of power creep treadmill that we're all on. The second thing that has happened is that, especially post pandemic, post 2020, more and more people have been getting into the format, and especially more and more like exiles from Legacy who have realized that 60 card reserve list formats are vanishingly rare these days,
Yeah.
or just that
Absolutely.
like standard tournaments are getting harder to find, modern tournaments are getting harder to find, because Commander is so popular. They've all started to move to Commander, and then you've seen Commander as a tournament format starting to emerge.
Yeah.
And that has led to a lot of brewing, that has led to a lot of sort of trial by fire of quirky old bullshit commanders and cards.
Like
And it is
manipulations and
harder and harder to hang on if you're not playing Rogside.
yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
that plus the power creep combined has led to this real sort of solving of the format.
Hmm.
And that I'm agnostic on, obviously. Like getting good, getting better and learning to play the cards we have smarter and trimming the fat, removing old nonsense from our decks. That I'm all for. But it has changed the shape of the format, and it's obviously changed how we've had to build our deck.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what you said personally, but uh, I also think that like mentioning tournament EDH as well has definitely sort of changed the aspect of the social dynamic is like integral to the core of Commander. It's what differentiates it from other formats in that you have three other opponents instead of just the one. So and that idea of like you bringing up Roxai and like blue decks like that where it's just like so like sharp edge and clean line um or clean or sharp line even uh sort of stuff is becoming more and more prevalent. But what do you think of you brought up just now that like obviously uh trial by fire and trying to just get better cards because as much as I love mere scrappling and Bond Beetle and my old
Right.
Kiruna lines, you know, I'm also accepting that with a game as popular as this, it's going to become more and more sort of powerful. What do you say to like bringing these sort of decks to tournaments, like the niche, the like in terms of I know some people would like to put decks into tiers. I'd probably put Animar like high of tier 3, low tier 2, if we were going to conform to that sort of
I have
thing.
never seen a tier list that works,
No,
honestly.
no, it doesn't make sense, but I'm trying to like sort of open the horizon and like make some
Sure,
sort of
yeah.
semblance of like
We're like fringe playable
fringe,
kind of thing.
fringe
Yeah,
playable decks becoming or being taken to EDH. Do you have any experience that you'd like to sort of talk on or anything?
sure. So I think if you are going to go into the tournament scene with Animar, the good thing to bear in mind is that rogue decks like Animar, fringe decks, often can sort of have a pretty good run due to Brewer's advantage, which
Hmm.
is that an unknown deck goes sort of under the radar in a pod. like if you're sitting down in a pod with the Najila guy, the Rogsai guy, and the Blue Farm guy, those three decks are going to be much more worried about one another than they are about Animar. So a smart pilot with a nicely built deck, or even with a less well built deck, but
Sorry, one sec. Can you still hear me, Jack? 1 second. Sorry, I can you hear me? Um, 1 second.
shooting the Baron or the Lily Splash Mentor or the Sabretooth we're using, those kinds of things do still hurt us. So we are still vulnerable to creature removal. That said, I think the reason I'm not terrified of this, it does speak to Brewer's advantage, what we were just talking about, is that if you are sitting at a table and there's like a Najila, a Kinnan, a Nadu, and an Animar, and Najila's holding their Deadly Rollick, they're not going to be shooting my Baron Master Wizard, you know? We're just not anybody's top priority for removal anymore until it's too late. So a very, very smart player who knows what Animar is going to be doing, and a lot of the people who play Animar these days do it at an LGS where they know everybody and they're like, oh, that's the Animar guy. I played with him last week. I know his game plan. That guy does have to worry about someone like rollicking their dockside into exile because they know what's coming. The average player, though, in a tournament, they're going to be thinking like, and it doesn't take a lot of like Machiavellian genius politics when you see the path go on the stack to say like, okay, I'm over here being on a 2011 deck, but that guy's on Nadu. You sure you don't want to shoot Nadu or Stella Lee or Kinnan or anything right now? Like 100% before you name your target.
Yeah,
Just think like, what do you think I'm doing
uh,
versus what do you think they're doing? So like there, it's very easy both to make the sort of correct decision to not shoot the Animar players'
yeah,
creatures. And then with regard to Bowmaster specifically, basically almost every black deck, even Turbo, is running Bowmaster now. One, just because it's aggressively costed and really, really, really good. And also because it synergizes with wheels, which is what the Turbo decks are doing. Obviously, that can be sort of a pain in the ass for us, but generally speaking, I don't think we run out most of our stuff early. A lot of our board development early on is some mana rots into a like big fatty creature that generates value, like Sphinx or whatever. That game plan is, well, not Sphinx specifically, but Snake, whatever. That game plan is mostly immune to Bowmaster, and I don't think if they really had some spare pains to throw around, that they're gonna point them at us. But in general, if you really, really do see yourself getting focused down with Bowmaster, we do have some anti-creature tools we could be playing. Sphinx Serenade is a good card. I don't generally like it for the main deck just because it is not a proactive counterspell. It can't really protect anybody's win attempt. But if you are consistently getting targeted by creatures that mess you up, like Bowmaster, Serenade's good. Stern Scolding's a little worse, but it does sort of the same thing, at least with regard to Bowmaster. So we have tools against that if we really, really care. I wouldn't say it's like gonna make me
yeah,
take Animar apart or anything, but it's out there.
yeah. Really good stuff again. I think
Just point at the scarier deck.
yeah, just go like back, you know, read Nadu's text box for more than about a second, and you'll probably reconsider your like, your abrupt decay on mine instead of his scoot swarm or whatever, you know,
Yeah, seriously.
like, um, and I think it's that weird sort of balance of like because our deck is so like does its own thing, we don't get that many new cards compared to other decks that are more like are doing more openly broken things, if that makes sense. Like the Wheel
Well, we're
Juggler.
missing 2 colors worth of good cards, and in 2024, every color gets 10 or 15 good cards now.
And
Like it
good
used to be,
reserves.
you'd play a Zur deck and you'd have 2 white cards in it. I think when I played Zur, I had like Swords and Angel's Grace, and that was almost it for my white cards.
Yeah, makes
Uh,
sense.
but these days, it's like if you're building a deck that has white in it, you've got 20 good cards to look
Yeah,
at.
you
So
can look at some of
we
those.
do miss out on an
Yeah.
actual 2/5 of the color pie as opposed to a bad color worth of the color pie. So
Yeah, that's fair. I think in that regard as well then, like uh I I, I want to add on to what you said earlier about um Commander being about Commander back in when it was first released, because that's what like that's what from my experience as well, it was just that. It was like this is my dude is gonna do cool stuff and I'm gonna try and,
right.
you know, do my cool thing. But now it's more so about like, oh, how many colors can I sort of scram into this deck, and how wow do these colors mash? And like I've got like Blue Farm is one of those decks where it's like you have like it's a 110 card deck because you literally have so many good options.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
to go back on what I was saying about like, because we don't get that many, we're in a very strange spot of like we can sort of play the sly, like, oh, we're not doing anything, we're just, you know, I'm just trying to survive, I don't think I'm going to win this game, blah 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 blah. And I think that's quite a interesting dynamic to have, because from what you like, what do you think on Wizards? Just what it feels like Wizards are looking at two color and just like seeing incredible amounts of power into them. Like in the last few years, we've got Winota and Kinnan, who are like, you know, I mean, when
Nadu.
Magna came, yeah. Now Nadu and like
Stella.
Stellian, Obnixilis, and like
Hmm.
three color, not as much love, but and in the one color department, we have like Magda. Um,
Don't play monocolor. I'm sorry. I hate to say it, but like it's 2024, buddy. Don't build a monocolor deck. Just full stop. I know Crick exists. I know Magda's a thing. I know Urza used to be a thing. Don't build monocolor. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on from that, yeah. Um, Might come back to that later if that's okay with you, Jack. Just talking about
You can cut that if you want.
no, it's fine, it's fine. Um, what? So yeah, talking now, bringing that up of like one color decks just not cutting it, because unfortunately your commander's text box would have to read like Black Lotus to
Yeah,
like
no,
it
you
would have to,
to miss out on 4/5 of the good cards in the format is just
yeah.
almost insurmountable.
And again, it's that weird dynamic because, like, when people think of 4 and 5 color, they're thinking of like insanely broken decks, like insanely powerful decks that can just abuse tons of absolutely broken cards. And then you've also got, like in Magda, I don't really fit. I think the other decks are in a rough spot at the moment. I don't know if they're going to get out of it, but like Urza and Zer and decks like that, but just are very much struggling. Um, you're like you've got this incredible amount of power sunk into your commander. Um, but yeah, that, I think, unfortunately, shout out to all my monocolored players. You know, I'm big lover of Magda. I remember seeing Craig back in the day. I remember seeing Orvar, or what's the mono blue guy that like searches for an artifact? Him, stuff like that. Uh, I can't remember
Theta
his name.
Adele?
No, older than that. He's like a tap ability. It's very old, like really weird stuff.
Oh,
Um,
Arkham Dagson.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Paradox Engine's gone. You can't build Arkham Engine anymore.
Oh, goodbye, Pension. We loved you. I mean, you were broken, but
Yeah,
you were nuts.
that was such a
um,
cool card.
such as
R.I.P.
rest in peace. um, yeah, now we're just in a spot where I think monocolored decks are struggling a lot, because your commander has to be like, when you
Not
cast a
worth it.
spell, make 1,000 treasure tokens and draw a
The
billion
only one that
cards.
works, I would say, is Magda, because Magda does something that has always been inherently busted, which is tutoring from the command zone. Magda just has the edge of doing it at instant speed,
Yeah.
and very, very cheaply, which is inherently busted.
Yeah,
And if that deck had one other color, it would be like Kinnan, in my opinion. It would be
yeah,
any one other color makes that deck really, really strong, and we all have to
yeah,
start paying attention to it. Uh, it works because it has an insane level of brewer's advantage. Nobody knows what the Magda people are doing over there. They have a bunch of weird instant level lines that use garbage like Arietta's apple, and you've never seen what you
yeah,
like. I have to read more cards from Magda than any deck I play against with any regularity, because it's like, is this one of their random filler dwarves that taps? or is it a card that's going to
Right.
win them the game? So do I kill that? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't even know the names of any of their dwarves, but like, should I
Me
kill it or
neither.
not?
I'm
So
clueless. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that was a good example, a good callback to Brewer's Advantage, and a good example of what it takes to be a monocolor deck these days. If
yeah,
you consider Magda like a really good deck these days, which is,
yeah.
I don't know, hard to say.
Um, but yeah, I think um, whilst me personally, I'm a big fan of Commander being about Commander. There's also that aspect of like, yeah, it's usually what happens to most games, which is as the player base increases, the company needs to make more things that are more like to because they have more players, so they need to pay attention to more of them. I think that idea of like there being like, oh, I want to pick this commander. And back in the day, it was like, well, there isn't any, so you're gonna have to deal with it. But now it's like you have, oh, you want to go super quick, you can do that. You want to do like incredibly weird stuff. I'm looking at like Sisse and Magda. Go ahead, like that sort of thing.
People used
Um,
to play Child of Alera so they could have a five-color deck. Like it used to be the Dark Ages. Now there are six five-color commanders that are so good some of them had to be banned. Like
yeah. Goodbye, Golos.
we really used to have to be like digging in the bulk bin to find a commander with the right colors.
Yeah, looking at if anyone recognizes, they have my respect of like remember like Reaper King Turbo Nors, where it just was like it had that one
Every
card.
creature's a Vindicate.
Yeah, 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 like stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and my last question to go off sort of Animar in that discussion, and we have talked about it a bit. TEDH, or otherwise known as Tournament EDH,
Hmm.
is, I think, quickly becoming the sort of forefront of the format. What do you think in terms, as someone who's experienced such a vast majority of CDH? What's your opinion on Tournament EDH? Do you like it? What would you want as a like changes
Sure.
or anything?
Well, so I'm completely agnostic to the tournament scene in general. I'm personally not a big tournament player. I've been to like some of the Punt City ones that are pretty local to where I am. I hang out with a lot of the guys who are in those events. My play group is mostly like a tournament prep play group among relatively serious players. That said, I don't really like that scene. I don't. As soon as there are stakes involved, it becomes too much bullshit for me to deal with. I only play Magic cards to relax and have fun. And as soon as like the other three people in the pod and I have to start caring about like tiebreakers and win rates and stuff, it's more baggage than I want to deal with and something I'm just doing to hang out with my buddies. But anyway, I don't have any malice towards the tournament scene or anything like that. I will, however, say the way I see it these days, there are two kinds of CEDH, and a lot of people don't necessarily think that way when they're talking about it, and it can be a little confusing. But the way I see it now is that EDH at large is the biggest kind of Magic that gets played these days. Like most games probably are EDH games compared to Modern or Pioneer or any of these other formats that have come out in the last couple of years. Um, Within EDH at large, there's a sliver of that is competitive EDH, and that's a pretty small group, but it's growing fast. Um, and within competitive EDH, there's another small sliver, which is the tournament focused players. And so I would say probably the majority of CEDH is not tournament focused players. And if you go to like the CEDH Reddit these days, you'll see a lot of people who are just like brand new to CEDH. I brought up my old like warrior tribal deck. I want to see if I can make it as competitive as possible. These are not people who are going to be winning tournaments. Obviously, maybe after a lot of practice and more learning about stuff, they will be, but they're still playing CEDH. They're just not playing CEDH with the intent of like winning that $1,000 pot at the tournament scene, you know? So there's a lot of room in CEDH for stuff that isn't just Broadside, Najila, Blue Farm, Kinnan, and whatever the other two or three consensus best decks are, Captain Sisse, stuff like that. So I think some people think about CEDH if they've had some exposure to the tournament scene, they start getting discouraged about CEDH and thinking like, well, everything that isn't one of the top 10 decks is garbage. It's never going to win anything. Who cares? Why would you play that? But there's a lot of CEDH. Like the average LGS CEDH scene is going to be some folks who don't want to proxy their Mox Diamonds and Mana Crypts. It's going to be some folks who are like, I've got this really, really good Kalia deck. It wins all my casual games. I'm pretty sure I can make it CEDH if I just try hard. And I say that as a guy who was big in the Kalia scene back in the day. It's not going to happen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, there are going to be people who like just picked up the format last week and printed off an outdated version of Blue Fun that they want to give it a shot with because they just start out, they don't know what they're doing. So the average CEDH game isn't going to be like the last three top competitors from the big tournament and you. It's going to be a fair number of people who are, for whatever reason, not quite at the tournament level yet, but they're all having fun and playing great Magic. So that's the kind of scene where I envision Animar doing really well. I don't think either me or Evan or you or anyone else is going to like really destroy the tournament scene with Animar and make it a top deck. I do think, however, we can all have a lot of fun and put up really good win rates at in CEDH in just as viable a version of competitive commander. At sort of a lower power level goof around CEDH scene. It's like beer and pretzels CEDH versus tournament CEDH. In the same way we think of EDH versus CEDH, there's sort of a less all-in tournament focused brew of CEDH that I think actually is most players' experience with the
Yeah.
format.
I think again, incredible answers all around in this very epic interview today. I think, yeah, like, and I think it, in terms of like, you can take. I think there's serious sort of uh sort of what's the word I'm looking for, like worth in taking what you like and just playing it, right? Obviously, CDH as a format is play to win. You are trying to kill your opponents in some way, right? You're trying to win the game. Um, and I think, whilst I have said that I like the push towards more streamlined, I also think that's worth in knowing that, like, if you have a deck and you feel confident, there's no means that, like, people from this tournament setting telling you, oh, if you're not on these decks in a tournament, you're going to do poorly, or if it's not one of the ones that you mentioned, like, then what are you doing? I think there's worth in that, and I very, very much agree on that aspect. Um, but yeah, I think that's most of the questions I have. I don't think I've got any more, and you've provided. You've really sort of taken it home that you are a wealth of knowledge. um, uh, like
Well, I
again,
appreciate you saying that. I don't know
yeah,
if it's true. I play Animar, but
yeah.
thanks for saying that.
No worries. And I hope like people will see this video and go, yeah, okay, this is again like tournament is important, but at the same time, it's Magic the Gathering. I'm not going to like, I don't want to like sweat a fountain's worth when I go to an event because I'm stressed.
Don't play Magic if you're not enjoying it.
Yeah,
Don't build a deck that you don't like playing. You're not doing anybody any favors, and you yourself are, in my opinion, making it harder than it needs to be.
yeah, agreed.
This is a children's card game. We should all be enjoying what we're doing with our time here.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't have any other sort of things or questions to talk about. You very succinctly sort of answered most of my questions. But I hope you enjoyed this very epic, very wow made interview. Uh,
Add some graphics, and we can do a
yeah,
thumbnail where I have my mouth open like. So
yeah,
yeah, we'll do some shit like that. Get your view count up.
yeah. I'm gonna put the like red circles like pointing like Jim Craig.
You'll
Oh,
never believe what this Animar player said.
oh my god, I can't
Shocking
believe.
revelations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoilers for new One Piece.
um, yeah. Hopefully that will get all the clicks, all the taps. But I don't have
Well,
anything
you'll have
else.
one from me.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think uh, I don't have any other follow-ups.
Cool.
Hopefully,
Well, in that case, yeah, thanks for having me on, and I look forward to seeing the video.
Yeah, awesome. See you later.
Cool. All right, we can cut right there.